with Pacific Research Institute, and same organization that Sally Pipes came from last month. He's a principal of T-Squared of Associates, a firm providing consulting services to the energy and technology industries. Tom Tanton will discuss the cap and trade. Mr. Tanton has over 35 years' experience in the energy, economy, and environmental fields. T-Squared and Associates are active in the area of energy and interconnected infrastructures, analyzing and providing advice on the impacts of energy prices, environmental quality, and regional economic development. Mr. Tanton has a wealth of experience in energy-related issues in the state of California and nationally. Prior to 2000, Mr. Tanton was Principal Policy Advisor with the California Energy Commission, where he was responsible for designing and implementing legislation, including restructuring gasoline and natural gas supply and pricing, energy siting, environmental issues, technology development, and transportation. He has made presentations to a number of commissions and boards in California and nationally, including the California Energy and Public Utilities Commissions. He's also testified before several state legislatures and Congress and provided expert testimony in power plant siting cases. Let's give a warm Silicon Valley welcome to Tom Tanton.
If I didn't know better, I'd be impressed. Richard has said that I will be talking about cap and trade, which is a real important issue. It's sort of second to healthcare today in the Congress. And we here in California have a microcosm, a little living laboratory of what cap and trade is all about. It's under Assembly Bill 32, which is referred to as the Global Warming Solutions Act. It's not the Global Warming Solutions Act at all. It's a government intrusion on your daily life. Part of implementing AB 32 is just such a cap and tax provision. The Air Resources Board is just about to adopt regulations implementing that, and I'll explain what cap and tax is all about in just a bit. But it's going to impose a tax on Californians over the next 10 years of $140 billion. That's pretty bad. But the worst thing is, it also takes that $140 billion away from the discretion of the legislature, such that they have, and put it in the hands of unelected regulators called the CARB, California Air Resources Board. $140 billion. In any event, California is often, they like to say, that they are the leaders in environmental policy. We also hear politicians, with the exception of Ms. Carr and Mr. Campbell and a few other conservatives, we need to run California like a business. Well, as Richard mentioned, I've been doing this for 40 years. Well, he said 35, but that's because it's old. And it only dawned on me about 2 weeks ago what business California is in. Well, California is in the business of building stranded assets. For those of you who don't know what a stranded asset is, it's something that you put a lot of money into and then cannot use. Because it's become, it's not competitive in the market, or the regulator says you can't do it. I started a list one time of all the stranded assets that regulators had created in California. Well, there was the MTBE. Remember that stuff they forced oil companies to put in gasoline, and then it turned out it was not such a good thing? Remember corn ethanol? Corn ethanol was the hero, the fuel standard aspect of Assembly Bill 32. Well, guess what? It takes more energy to make it than it produces. It creates more greenhouse gases than it avoids, because they're cutting down rainforests in South America to make ethanol. Another stranded asset. There's plants in California, there's plants in Nebraska that were built using billions of dollars that all of a sudden have now become zero. They went from hero to zero because of one vote by the California Air Resources Board to no longer treat ethanol as a hero. Now, I'm supposed to talk about cap and trade, and I'm likely going to divert. And if any of you hear me diverting, raise your hand and tell me you're getting off track. Richard said, talk for about 45 minutes. Well, sometimes I talk to the radio stations, and sometimes I talk to college classes. And I've got this span of knowledge from 5 minutes of talking to 4 weeks of talking. And I want to get you just right. What cap and trade is a faux market, F-A-U-X market. I don't know how many of you appreciate black velvet paintings. You know, the black velvet nudes and the pictures of Elvis. This is a perfect example of black velvet painting. A cap and trade program is not a market-based system because a market-based system requires a willing seller and a willing buyer. In this case, there's no willing buyer. They're forcing you to buy permits. And the way it works, basically, is they say, all right, we're going to allow X million tons of greenhouse gases to be emitted next year. And in order to be permitted to emit some amount, you have to buy a permit. And they come in little 1 million metric ton increments, and then they have an auction. Everybody that wants to emit bids. Well, I'll pay $5, I'll pay $10. Guess what? The price can go up as high as $200 a ton or more. It is the biggest, well, it's the number of biggest. First of all, it's the biggest tax increase in California history, bar none. The second thing is it completely eliminates property rights. So for all you folks that have a factory or a farm or even just a cow, and you need to buy a permit, all of your past investments, all of your property rights investments, all of your property rights in innovation that you've encountered over the years and that you've implemented over the years have now been deemed to be worthless. So it's not only the biggest tax increase, it's the biggest theft of property rights. Ms. Carr mentioned about investigating fraud in California, in Santa Clara County. The biggest fraud, oh, that's not the way to walk. Here, I'm trying to get close to my audience, and I get feedback. You know, as I mentioned, I've been doing this for a long time. And it's been a long walk in the desert. Because as a conservative in energy and environmental policy in California, I don't have a lot of friends. I am so happy to see this room overfilling and overflowing to the point where Rich has got to go out and find a new venue. There is hope. And the good news is, you're not the only group. I've had such a good 2010 that I just can't describe it. There's another bit of good news. Somebody mentioned about 80 propositions on the ballot. Well, there likely will be a number of them. There's one in particular I want you to pay attention to. Give it your full and complete support if you can. And if you can't support it, sit down and be quiet. It's referred to as the California Jobs Initiative. It's a very simple thing. In fact, it's only 4 lines long, I think. What the California Jobs Initiative says is, until California's unemployment reaches 5.5% or less for 4 consecutive quarters, any and all regulations adopted pursuant to Assembly Bill 32 are hereby suspended.
Yeah. All right.
Now, we have a recently announced candidate for governor. He announced his candidacy yesterday. He's currently in the office of Attorney General.